Inside the X is a short newsletter every Friday designed to give you some fun right before the weekend. It'll include links to blog posts, articles, books, quotes, and recent purchases I've made. Everything is handpicked to add value to your life. To join, email entertainmentxpodcast@gmail.com.
Good morning, Vietnam!
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't fly!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
I want to take a moment to talk to you guys today about asking for things, asking for people to talk to you, asking for opportunities, because in the last few weeks, really, you know what, to sum up this whole year, it's been a result of me asking for people to talk to me, asking for people to be on the podcast. And as a result, I've made so many more friends, dare I say connections. My network has increased. If you can see, I'm using air quotes right now. And I think it's really important to kind of tell you guys about what I've learned from this past year of asking, and maybe it's something you can apply in your life. So keep on keeping on and enjoy. So as we begin here, I want to start with a quote I heard. And the quote is, "Life punishes the vague wish and rewards the specific ask." Now, I'm going to tell you how that applies to me and then how you can apply it to yourself. Previously, would say about 2 years ago, I was living in the city and I had this desire to create, to do more than work in other people's projects. Don't get me wrong. I love to be a part of other people's projects. I wanted to have my own. I wanted to have my own sense of creation, whatever, however you want to describe that. And I started reaching out to people that I thought would have the answers. And these people were way above my weight class, you know, in terms of boxing. They were much more established. Some could call them celebrities. And I was reaching out and I was saying, you know, "Hi, my name is Clay. I'd like to pick your brain about X, Y, and Z, and I'd like to see, you know, get you coffee," because some of them are in the city, "and see if we can sit down and have a conversation about what I want to work on, what you're working on, et cetera, et cetera." Very kindly, few of them answered, not all of them. And then fast forward a year, I'm sitting in a restaurant over in Hell's Kitchen talking to my friend who's a producer for Good Morning America, Weekend Edition, and he, at the time, actually, I don't know if he's still there or not. So I was talking to him, and he's like, "You know what? You should start a podcast. You have all these questions, and you want to find out information about the entertainment industry. You should have a reason." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, a reason. Okay, I'll do that." And so I created the podcast, and I started reaching out to people, and the numbers switched. For instance, if I was asking 10 people to chat with me prior to the podcast, 3 of them would say yes. When I asked 10 people to chat with me on the podcast, 7 people said yes, 3 said no. So I went from 3 saying yes, 7 saying no, to 7 saying yes, 3 saying no. That's a general statistic, but pretty accurate. And it was because my ask was specific. I had a platform. I had reasons. There was a theme. The whole thing was congruent. I wasn't even just saying like, "Yeah, my podcast," and then we sit down and talk over my iPhone and coffee. I purchased the equipment. It's real. The whole thing is real, as you can tell as you're listening to this. And because my ask got specific, I received answers. And as a result, many more opportunities have come because I haven't been meeting people with the intent of, "Give me a job, help me out, I need your assistance," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in a hungry or thirsty place. It's come from, "Hey, we're friends, you know, this is what we're chatting about," and then they come up with the idea, or something comes up throughout the conversation where it's like, "Oh, maybe you want to work together on that." And it's worked in my favor quite nicely, and their favor, because asking. So I want to get down to the specifics here with asking. When you're asking, you really, really, really need to ask specifically. You need to have a reason why you're going to talk to that person. You need to have a reason that you add value to their life. And that's the next part of asking, is adding value to someone's life. And now you might be thinking, well, what do I have to offer, Jonathan Groff? I'm Clayton Howe. He's Jonathan Groff. But funny enough, there is value added to his life when we sit down to chat, because we're talking about his life and he feels better. Not that he didn't feel better before, but he feels in that moment feels better about his life from talking about it and sharing it, because he knows other people can learn from what he's sharing. And that's the whole reason behind this. So it's not just specific, and it's not just giving value to that person, but adding value to those around you. And that's another part of it. I switched my mindset from, I need to do this, I want to do this, I have to have this, to how can I add value to the lives of those around me? And then it can come down to basic human nature things, love versus fear, fear versus courage. Those are situations that everyone, including myself, battle daily. So if I can minimize fear a little bit through having someone on the podcast to talk about their life and it helps someone else, then it's a win-win-win-win. And this is literally, the podcast was not contrived or created to, let me see who I can talk to. It wasn't that. It really came from, and does come from, a place of how can I add value to other people's lives. Now, I'm going to cover a little bit about human nature, and then I want to get into the specifics of email structure and how I went about asking and go about asking. So the human nature, more people speak than they listen. More people care about what's going on in their own lives than they care about what's going on in other people's lives. This is not a terrible thing. Some could call it a flaw. It's human nature. It's simply the way most of us are programmed, just from what we internalize, what we hear, what we see, freaking Instagram. So the idea behind that is I immediately, and this is another word that I wouldn't call it a quote, I'd definitely call it a word that I heard over and over again in my research of asking and talking to people. And the word is listen. Listen way more than you speak. When someone says something to you, it's probably something you don't know. And that's another philosophy that I go by, is that everyone I meet knows something I don't know. Everyone I meet in a day knows something I do not know. And another motto I repeat every day, almost every day, is today will be a magical day filled with encounters that will change my life. And as cheesy as that sounds, it's true. When you look for the magic in something, you find it. When you look for the bad in something or the terrible in something, you find it. So listen. And this was another really important aspect of what I was doing, because looking for the magic and listening, I would learn things about someone that I might not actually hear, because it just in one ear and out the other. If you think about your encounters in a day, how many people tell you things and how much of it do you actually retain? Because we don't actively listen in our day-to-day life. But when you do, you actually end up finding more out about that person and information that can benefit them and you. Because when you listen to something someone's working on and you are actively listening, you can think, oh, well, I have a person that they should meet and that could help them, or vice versa. Now, I want to take this moment in this part of the conversation to read you an email that I created early on when I was asking people to participate on my podcast. Now, the email I'm going to read you is someone that I know from school. They were my teacher, and I'll just read it to you. You'll get the idea. So I start with addressing them, and then I say, I was curious about something. Entertainment X is a podcast I'm starting, and I would really love to interview you on the show. It's a passion project of mine, and you became an immediate, obvious choice for discussing your life path and lessons learned. Attached is some more info to give you a better idea on the angle of the show. I remember back to your class, which was a class on life, how you discussed ways of being, and the bracelet that you gave each of us and what it symbolized, and I still hold on to that. In short, the lessons that you taught me changed my life and brought me to a much higher level of consciousness in and out of the room. Thank you. If this doesn't fit into your schedule at this time, I completely understand. I figured I would reach out either way. So there's a few things that went on in there. I connected it to a previous event that we both shared in. I was completely honest in my feelings of what I learned from this person. And I also gave them an out at the end of the email. You know, if it doesn't fit into your schedule, I completely understand, which I do and did. And this is really important because before this moment in time, I was not consciously thinking of the way I craft my emails. So going back to asking, which is the whole theme of this podcast, I would begin by relating to a situation or a moment in time that I have with this person, something that we both share, whatever it may be, as personal or as impersonal, meaning like, you know, something I saw them in that I didn't see with them or have met them in the past, and then bringing it to my question to chat with them about the podcast. And this is really, really crucial when you're reaching out to someone whom you don't really know. Because in the past week even, I have been speaking to CEOs of companies and speakers who literally get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to go speak at events and schools. And it's the way that I craft the email. Also, prior to sending an email or reaching out to ask someone something, I create a relationship with them. Now, sometimes that doesn't necessarily happen. Sometimes I reach out and I'm like, hey, this is a podcast I'm doing. I think it'd be great if we could chat. Please let me know if this fits into your schedule and if this is something that you think your followers would benefit from. But even if that's not the case, or if maybe I know the person is not going to say yes because they're literally, maybe they want to, they're just way too busy, is creating a relationship with that person. Something that maybe has to do with nothing, something that has nothing to do with the entertainment industry or whatever industry they're in, but by creating a personal, genuine relationship, then we become friends. And that's really what this whole life is about. People are your best resources. You're not going to accomplish anything without the help of other people. I mean, now that's very debatable, and there are a lot of things you could go into the woods and do on your own and complete, sure. But in a functioning society where we communicate with each other, it's crucial to create natural, meaningful relationships. And these words are thrown around, and I see it more and more because in the past year, I've even gone to some like mixers and events where you would quote unquote network. And a lot of it is people shoving business cards, you know, into other people's hands. And that doesn't work. I honestly try not to give out a business card when I'm meeting people because life happens and sometimes people don't have time to respond or email back or email you in the first place. So I always try and make an effort to get a person's email address before I make contact with them because I trust myself. And it's not that I don't trust them. It's just I trust myself to put it in my calendar and to reach out to that person. So I don't really go the business card approach, which, you know what, may sound a little bit easier. Oh, I go to an event, I give a bunch of people my cards. Great. They'll contact me. We'll be good to go. But keeping in contact with people alone is so very difficult, which is another thing I encourage you to do is like make a spreadsheet of the people you know, write it down, birthdays, notes from the conversations with them. And again, this is like not a normal situation. And a lot of people I don't know are doing it. If you're doing this already, please let me know because I want to know your process. I'm trying to figure out my own spreadsheets. But for instance, there was a CEO that I reached out to last week, and I just sent an email about the podcast and kind of congratulating him on some of the monumental moments that the company had recently partaken in. And this person answered me back in 8 minutes. That is why they're the CEO of a company, because they answer back so quickly. And I did the same thing with Seth Godin. If anyone doesn't know who he is, check his blog out, Google his name, read his books. The first book I ever read of his was Get What You Deserve. And this book changed my life. It literally taught me to get what I deserve, meaning I deserve a lot, so I get a lot, or I deserve very little, so I get a little. And it focuses on you and your way of being and the way you come off to other people, because the way you come off to other people will decide what you get. Again, there are, varying degrees of that statement as well. For the most part, though, if you're not a likable person, no one's going to like you, which seems like a pretty logical statement. Now, I had heard a little while back another phrase: change your questions, change your life. And what the person meant when they said this was that most people are asking poor questions, so they're getting poor answers. And when you raise the quality of your question, the quality of your answers goes in direct proportion up as well. And this even goes into the way I conduct interviews in the podcast. When I'm talking to someone on the phone or in person, I, in my research, have found out what matters to them. And if I don't know what matters to them, I ask them, what matters to you? What did you want to be when you grew up? Who did you want to be? And this was very interesting. I was listening to an interview with Larry King, and he was talking about how bad questions are from reporters. And he was saying on the baseball field, a reporter goes up to like A-Rod, right, when he was playing. And he won the game, hit the ball out of the park, the whole thing. And the reporter goes up to A-Rod at the end of the game and is like, the bases were loaded. You stood at the plate. The man, he almost pitched the ball. You hit the ball out of the park. And then puts the mic in front of A-Rod. It's like, well, they didn't ask a question. They made a series of statements. And of course, he's going to respond because, well, the microphone's in front of him. But and this is what Larry King said, how interesting would it be at the end of like a World Series game, you go up to any of the baseball players on the team who won or lost, and you say to them, did you think that this could happen when you were a child? Or what was your baseball dreams? What did you want to be? Is this what you wanted to be? And the answer that might come out could be more emotional, but would be so much more interesting. And finding out what matters to other people can help you better communicate with other people, because now you're listening. You're paying attention. It's not about me, it's about we, it's about us, it's about you and what matters in your life. Because the more I know about what matters in your life, the more value I can add to your life. And by doing that and structuring my questions that way, I think the conversation turns out pretty all right, actually pretty remarkable. The conversations I have with people are really quite remarkable because we're talking about things that no one else would really ask. And it's also done in such a low stakes way. I don't sit down, have like the stack of blue cards that are like 3 feet high, and it's all very formal and it's da-da-da-da-da. By the way, he usually actually knows the answers to all the questions before he asks them. So I try to keep it a very low stakes environment. We're just having a chit chat. It's really like we're just talking, and yet we get to such wonderful, wonderful places because I genuinely care. And I find that this happens even when I'm ordering like a coffee at any coffee shop in New York City, asking the barista behind the counter, how are you doing? How's your day going? Before I start, because sometimes I'll start with like, hi, yes, can I get a large cold brew? And then I'm like, oh, sorry. How's your day going? And I've only started doing that because of how much thought I put into these questions with the podcast. I'm like, oh, I should add this to my life. And you have so many more magical interactions that changed my life, that would change your life. So back to this asking before I wrap up the conversation, which is all about asking, again, with the adding value. And I haven't done this, but it's this idea, and I'm still going to speak on it though, because I have done it just without money. But if you were to go up to someone and you say, hey, I need like $2,000 or $15,000, and you say that to me, my response might be, well, okay, a lot of people do, sure. But if you told me you needed the money to change people's lives, I would probably listen, because now what you're doing is adding value for me when I'm adding value for you. So it's that way of asking. And also asking with absolute, like undeniable conviction. When I ask for anything, it's completely completely I'm completely responsible for the way that I'm behaving. I never go up to someone I think is in a position of higher power and say, like, excuse me, sir, please, could I have some help with something, please? It's very much like, hi, my name is Clayton Howe. This is what I'm working on. This is how I think I can add value to what you're doing. I would love to chat with you on my podcast but to add value to my listeners through the life paths and struggles you've gone through. I know other people could learn from it. And would you be willing to chat with me? And the two differences, one, like, you don't even know what I'm asking for the first time. And the second time, you know exactly what I'm asking for. And you know that I am serious about what I'm doing. And I find this even more so because there's different degrees of asking. I asking for someone's time, so here's the other part. Asking for someone's time. Time is a non-renewable source. You cannot get your time back. This time right now I've spent recording this conversation is gone. It's passing and it'll be gone. I won't get it back. You can always get more money back. You can always get material things back, but you can't get time back. To ask for someone's time, in my opinion, is the most important thing that you could ever ask for from another human, because time is limited. So if you're going to ask for someone's time, make sure that it's worth the time they're going to sacrifice to talk to you. And that's why I go through hours of research on the people I talk to. I spend a whole bunch of time. I read communication books. I didn't just pick up the podcast and do it. I had been studying how to communicate prior to that and during it. And I learn even more by doing it. And because time is non-renewable, that is such an important resource that someone has. I thoroughly believe that if you ask, you will get answers, and you shouldn't stop asking until you get answers. Now, you might not get answers from the person you thought you'd get answers from. That doesn't mean you stop asking. You find someone else who is equally full of the answers that you might need, and you ask them the same way, intelligent, responsibly, specifically adding value to their life. Because you will get the answers you want when you ask. I am living proof of that with this podcast. You can literally get what you want when you ask, but you have to do it intelligently. You can't just say, oh, I need this. Will you help me? Da, da, da. Also, when you're asking people, many times you might not get a response. Even if someone wants to help you, life gets in the way. There's a lot going on. Follow-ups are very difficult for other people. So if you send one email, and this is just something that I have, it's almost like a rule of thumb. When I send my first email to someone, I almost immediately put in my calendar for 5 days from them to follow up with that person, because I'm just assuming that that person is way too busy to talk to Clayton Howe. Again, who the hell is Clayton Howe when they have to work on their, like, the Philadelphia report and the China review and whatever big projects they're working on. They don't have time to talk to me. And I recognize that, and I feel no sort of animosity towards that. I will just remind them 5 days later, hey, if this is something you're not interested in, please let me know. Or if this is something you're interested, please let me know. This just serves as a courtesy reminder to see if you're interested. I'd very much like to talk to you. And there's varying degrees on that too. Usually there's someone I'm reaching out to who just won their show won Emmys, and I respond, congratulations on the Emmy wins. I would very much like to talk to you if you have time, because sometimes someone will answer me and then they won't answer me for a long period of time, and it's assumed that life has gotten in the way. They're not just ignoring me. They have more important things to do. And so you ask intelligently. Also, if you're going to ask questions to someone, like, for instance, say you want some information on how to produce a show, or you want information, anything to do with entertainment, and you say to them, hey, can I get you coffee and pick your brain? That is probably the worst question to ask. Why? Because it involves time. That time that person can't get back. Now, I think I have a high batting average with this podcast, because when I talk to someone, it's been recorded and it's there forever, so they can share it with people. If they enjoyed the conversation, they can share it with their followers. It's not like I've just done it for selfish reasons over an Americano on the Upper West Side. So I thoroughly encourage you never, never, ever, never to say that. I mean, it's different when you're talking to a friend who's at the same level as you, but I'm talking about people that are like above your weight class, with boxing. And if someone says, I'd love to, if you have asked that question, they're like, I love to, I just don't have the time. Always find a thoughtful question of something they've worked on that you literally cannot find the answer on online, and there's a lot of places to look nowadays, and see if they can respond to it in the email, because it's much more quickly for that CEO who responded to me to answer one question I have. I'm not asking for time. I'm not asking for money. I mean, it does take a little bit of time, but much less than scheduling something with their assistant and having to go to the building and meet with them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're not getting answers from someone who can't meet with you, or if you don't think they have time to meet with you because you're not quote unquote important enough, or what you're working on isn't quote unquote important enough, then reach out and ask them, hey, can I just ask you, or not even say that, you just connect with them. You say something that means, you give them a statement that means something to them, something they've worked on, and then follow it with a question that you cannot find the answer to online. And that can get kind of tricky. For instance, there are certain people who have written a lot of books. There aren't many questions, and I'll bring up Seth Godin again because I really love this guy. There's not many questions that I can ask him in an email, because he's answered pretty much anything I would ask him in a speech that's recorded on YouTube somewhere, or in one of the dozen books he's written. So that even changes the game a bit, because there's no real what would I ask him that he hasn't already answered, And then it gets down to the core of, why am I contacting this person in the first place? Is it to make a stunt, to say I got in contact with this person? Or is it to actually find out something that you don't know? So, for instance, now you might be wondering, well, what the hell did you say to Seth? I thanked him. And that's his number one saying. And another thing that I've heard a lot, I think this was his billboard quote when he was on the Tim Ferriss show, or when he talked to Tim Ferriss, it was, write a thank you note tomorrow or today. Write a thank you note to someone, because thank yous are not happening enough. And you notice how many times in an email exchange, you get your answer, you get your thing, and then you're done and you're out and you're gone. But I reached out to him, and all I said was, this is the first book I read of yours. This is what the information means to me. This is what I'm doing now. Long story short, thank you. And he's like, go, 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 make a ruckus, And that's the end of the email exchange. I didn't piss him off. I didn't take up a whole bunch of his time. And hopefully maybe it made him feel good, because I thanked him for the value he's added to my life. So I could go on with this conversation for another half hour. I think this is the place to end it. If you have any specific questions for me on asking, please ask, and I will answer. I'm telling you, change your questions, change your life. In 2018, the amount of people that I have met that I would have never crossed paths with is mind-boggling to me. And it's changed my life, and it's given me new opportunities. And Ryan Serhant, he was on New York, the $1 Million Listing on Bravo for a period of time. He's a realtor here in the city. He says he makes an effort to meet 5 new people a day. If you think about that, 5 new people a day, that's 25 people you could meet in a 5-day work week. That's a lot. That could almost be, without counting the weekends, even if you took a break on the weekends, that's about 100 people that you could meet in 1 month. And people are your best resource. So I thoroughly encourage you to think up questions, solid questions, questions that can change your life. And this even applies to asking yourself. If there's a place that you're at in your life and you don't want to be there anymore, you want to level up, you want to level out, you want to change, you want to go some different direction, you want to do something, ask honest questions to yourself. Where you're at, where do you want to be? How do you get there? What are the roads? What are the options? What are the opportunities? And ask yourself with that same level of intelligent question asking, because you're going to find out the answers to the questions you ask are going to become more intelligent, and you're going to think of new things that you have never thought of before. So go, go, go. Make a ruckus, as Seth Godin says. And I hope you enjoyed this. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. And have a solid weekend. Peace.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.